Hello, everybody. Gary Laubach and Mike Joseph, and we're back. It's time for more football. We are behind the mic. Glad you are joining us. Before we look at the opponent this week, Sacred Heart, for Lafayette as they open their season, second year for John Troxel, I want to talk just a little bit about some of the rule changes. So if you're watching and you haven't heard about them and you get a little bit confused by some things that are happening, most of them, Mike, are designed for two reasons. To make the game move just a little bit quicker, and that is supposed to stop or at least cause fewer injuries.
Yeah, I think so. I think what's happening right now, you saw the great changes they've made in baseball that have sped the game up. I think college football is trying to get under 3 hours. Right. I mean, I think the average was 3 hours and 25 minutes, which is way too long to watch a football game. But some of these rule changes have, I think, are going to be great. Again, not stopping the clock after first downs is the big one. Obviously, consecutive timeouts, and then there's some other things they're going to do based upon whether or not you can have certain timeouts at certain times of the game at the end of the game. But I think the big one is going to be obviously first down, so we can talk about that.
Yeah, just to reiterate, Mike alluded to it. If in anything except for the last 2 minutes, if there's a first down, the clock will not stop now as it has been in the past, where they repositioned the football and then started the clock up again. That definitely is going to save some time. And of course, the other one is you can call one timeout, you can't call consecutive timeout.
Yeah, and I think if you look back last year, there was an actual game against Pittsburgh was in Pat Narduzzi, the head coach, called a timeout prior to an onside kick. He got them to come out like basketball, take a look at what they were setting up, called a consecutive timeout, and then ended up getting the football back. So they did a great job at that. So that was the consecutive timeout that they want to try to avoid.
Yeah, so that should speed the game up a little bit. The only other change in the rules this year is the first and third quarters won't be extended on a penalty. Not really a big deal, I don't think, there. All right, Sacred Heart. Sacred Heart will entertain the Lafayette Leopards this Saturday at 6 o'clock. Their head coach, Mark Knopfrey, has been there a long time, 12 years. He is 67 and 53 overall. He has 5 conference titles to his credit, and the big but is they did not play very well last year. That was a disappointing season for them last year. 5-6, they lost their last 5 ball games, and obviously did not get off to a good start because Lafayette broke a 5-game losing streak. They stopped them on the 1-yard line to win 6-0, a game that had no offense whatsoever.
No, not at all, and what a way to start off the John Troxel era, obviously, with a shutout, number one, and then stopping him on 4th and goal. It was defensive dominated for Lafayette, but this is a team, Sacred Heart, which has got a puzzling from last year. I think the first loss of the season set the tone for their entire year, and then losing those games because Mark Knopfrey's always been consistent. They've always had a good team. They have athletes. They've always had fifth-year seniors up front blocking. They put on good pass rush. They play good defense, and they're very good on special teams. Now, having Malik Grant back is going to be big for them, so they're going to look to probably establish that running game and try to get through a front seven for Lafayette that may be a bit diminished from last year.
Yeah, you already mentioned their star. He's an All-American, Malik Grant. He's 5'9", 200 pounds. He's a graduate. He's in his 5th year. Walter Payton watched. He has well over 2,000 yards in his career, 2,598. He will be the focus because they are a bit inexperienced at quarterbacks. They have 2 quarterbacks. Both are back, but both really didn't play a lot last year. I guess they're going to start Cade Privola, but they also have Rob McCoy, who's probably more of a runner than a thrower. So it's really kind of probably all going to center around Grant.
I think that's what they're going to try to establish, obviously. And then McCoy's a guy that can run the ball as well off the zone read. So we're going to see a lot of zone read. It's going to be disciplined defense for Lafayette. I think Lafayette puts a very athletic group on the field. They're going to put those 4 linebackers are phenomenal. You may see them go a little more 3-4 as well as 4-3. So Mike St. Germain got a chance to catch up with him last week. They may try to get as many athletes on the field as they can, and that's going to be very important against a team with the zone read like Colgate that can run the football and then surprise you with the pass. So it's going to be a lot of Malik Grant. I think it's going to be a lot of kind of domination up front, try to establish that and then throw the play action.
On the defensive side, just like we have outstanding linebackers, they do too. DeAndre Bird and Ernest Howard. They led the team in tackling last year. They're both exceptional linebackers. Arsheen Giles is an outstanding defensive back. So their defense will certainly test us, even though our offense is looking better, no question about it. In fact, let's talk a little bit about Lafayette now. Every year, I think, since you and I have been together, we have come into the season talking about we can't run the ball and the offensive line. I don't think we necessarily have to worry as much about that this year.
Well, we shouldn't really. We've got a lot of guys coming back off of injury. We're going to have a big offensive line. I mean, 300 pounds across the line. Consistency is going to be the thing. I had to get a chance to catch up with Mike Barr, the senior captain. And they need to establish the run. They need to do that to take the pressure off of Ryan Schuster. Remember, Ryan coming off an injury but has looked fantastic. You and I have both been to scrimmages. They have weapons all over the field. At tight end, I think Gilbert's got to get involved. But this offensive line has got to establish themselves as a team that can road grade, a team that can get double teams, get to second level. And again, the one thing I do worry about with Lafayette is they don't have the big back. They don't have the Jaden Sutton. And you know, see how important Jaden was last year. Maybe Najee Adams, maybe he can do it. I saw him do a really nice job in the last scrimmage. He's a bigger kid, 213 pounds. But with Curtis and Conyers, they're not as big, so they're not going to move the pile. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, but this offensive line has to establish himself. It's all about that, protecting Ryan Schuster, keeping him upright, and letting him throw the play action.
One thing in the scrimmages, I'm sure you noticed it too, one thing the backs are, they are quick and elusive. Yes. So if, as you mentioned, we can get to the second level, get them to the second level, they're going to get to the third level.
Yeah, we saw that in the Lehigh game right off the bat. The 71-yard run just popped it wide open and took it. And these guys in space can make plays. So maybe the screen game's big. Maybe getting them out in space underneath against linebackers is going to be a big thing. Those are just extended handoffs and runs. So, but they're going to have to run the football. How they're going to do it, I'm not sure. The inside zone, the outside zone. And I know Ryan's a second year for him, even though he was hurt last year. Again, establishing it up front, Mike Barr, John Olmstead, Boshi, those three guys inside. Again, Ryder Langsdale has become a force now at 300 pounds. These three interior guys are the key.
And they can throw the ball. They've got outstanding wide receivers. Carl Smith, Elijah Stewart, Chris Caracia. They're all outstanding with great speed. We may see some bombs during the season for sure.
I've definitely seen them go deep. They've tried to take the top off the defense. Caracia was that guy last year. They had tried to establish that down the field. And Carl Smith is the X factor. He's a guy that can get open underneath. He has great separation. Not too many Lafayette receivers, since maybe like a Mark Ross, could separate. This guy separates at the top of his route. He can separate over the top. He can blow the top off the defense. Carl Smith is so energetic. I'm so happy to see him be a captain. He's come a long way. But how about Elijah Stewart? How good was he last year as a freshman? He's only going to get better. And I look at a couple young guys that may see some action as well. And don't forget about Griffin Rooney. He's a good one.
If there's less concern about the offense, is there a little more concern about the defense? We know the linebackers are outstanding, probably the best crew in all of the Patriot League. Defensive line, defensive secondary. Your concerns?
My concerns is just, are we stout enough up front like we were last year? Is Adam Port going to play? Not quite sure. He might be hurt. Yeah, he might be hurt. But there's some good ones up front. Jalen Joseph is coming in. Obviously, Amir Crawley. Those are two guys that we're going to have to depend on from the freshman class. But we got to be able to stop people with the 7 up front. And again, if it's great if Marco's making tackles, but if he's making them 10 yards down the field, not very good. Do we move Billy Schaefer up front? Do we get him maybe not to put his hand in the dirt, but come off the edge a little bit? He's, again, an X factor on defense. So the front 7's going to be faster, I think, than they were last year, but can they get the pressure with 4, or do they have to bring an extra guy against these quarterbacks when they do have to throw the ball? Not concerned about the secondary. Love them, and Tang, terrific out there. Du Bois has had a great season last year, a little bit undersized, and Sekou White is ready to go off.
I think last year getting that 6-0 win would really propel us into being a good, tough football team. Confidence is so important in these independent games. We have Duke next week. That's a game you kind of say, well, let's just hope we stay close. So this game is super important just from a mental standpoint.
Yeah, let's keep Riley Leonard and Duke in the back, on the back burner, one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. But, I think if Lafayette's got to go up there. I watched the Fordham game last week. And again, they just couldn't establish the run, and then they had trouble with an inaccurate young quarterback. No more Tim DeMorat out there. So you've got to be able to establish the run. I think Lafayette can do that. They've got to come up front and play ball and win the line of scrimmage. If they don't win the line of scrimmage, they're not going to win the ball game.
Mike also does Inside the Huddle. What are you doing this week?
We're going to talk pure offensive line. We're going to talk about double teams. We're going to talk about slip blocks. We're going to talk about everything you're going to see me and you talk about all week long and throughout the year about what this offensive line needs to do. do. We're going to talk about technique. We're going to talk gap control. We're going to talk everything offensive line to get us started off well.
Inside the Huddle on GoLeopards.com. Behind the mic every week before a football game on GoLeopards.com. For Mike, I'm Gary. Thanks so much for joining us once again. We hope you stay with us all year long.